So yesterday, me and you got into it a little bit about like what could show up. I don't know if you saw what I noted, what I titled this video. PFAA CEO Drake Lewis.
So dumb. Yeah.
But yeah, we got into it a little bit yesterday about like what could come up or what is like a part of CrossFit and fits within like the sport side of it versus actual CrossFit.
Yeah.
So the way it started was Metfix posted that thing where they were basically saying that Metfix is different from CrossFit because CrossFitters are concerned with, how did it word it? Optimizing their short-term fitness rather than their health, right? That's the way they worded it.
Yeah.
And then I kind of was just saying I think that's bullcrap because that's what CrossFit is. And I think that the CrossFit Games and CrossFit Sport has drifted pretty far away from what CrossFit, not pretty far, has drifted from what CrossFit actually is. And so that's where we started. And then you said you'd rather the distinction be CrossFit the sport versus CrossFit for life.
Well, yeah, my response to that was that post you made, like kind of clickbaity, like tagging Hopper in it. You were like, Hopper does functional fitness, not CrossFit. And like, I understand where your sentiment is about like the distinction between like what should happen with CrossFit and the affiliates and like what the methodology means opposed to like what the sport is. Because 100% like what the games people are doing, the sport of CrossFit is not like an exact replication of what goes on in the affiliates. Like, we know that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I say that because I just like, as a CrossFitter myself and someone who competes, like I want to be associated with CrossFit, so I hate like if I like had to call it functional fitness. Like I still want to be a CrossFitter because I do feel like I associate a ton with CrossFit because I'm involved in an affiliate. I'm a head coach. I work with members. I live the CrossFit methodology a lot, even if it's not perfect like you want it to be all the time. So I still like want there to be like, you know, crossover of me still being called a CrossFit athlete. I would never want to be called a functional fitnesser.
Yeah. And I get that, but I think that CrossFit has drifted, like the games has drifted from actually being CrossFit, in my opinion.
But don't you think that CrossFit acknowledges that the sport side of it is a slight, like, it's a branch of it. It's not trying to be like an exact replication of the core methodology. Don't you feel like it's saying,
but
like,
why?
this, because
why
it's saying,
it be?
it's saying, because don't they like blatantly say that like this is what CrossFit is capable of, but it's not saying like this is what we're trying to like replicate to the masses. Does that make sense?
We're saying
just
that
like
the CrossFit Games is what we're capable of?
Yeah, it's saying it's like a branch. It's like,
but I don't even think the CrossFit Games is what CrossFit's capable of.
Well, I think it's just showing it's like almost like it's almost like a brag of like, this is a part of like this is another extension of what like our methodology can like create.
Provide you.
And like they've always talked about, like it's a marketing tool. Like it's a highlight to get people in the door of what the real focus is, which is like, right, lifestyle, curing chronic disease, right? And so like that's originally what like the goal was. It was to make it a marketing tool, because people do like to see that stuff. They like to see like big flashy things, and I think it does catch people's eye. I don't think they've ever necessarily tried to like, they never wanted it to be the main thing, right? And that was Greg's whole qualm with it, is because it would take over too much attention. But I think from the beginning, they never said that it was supposed to be the exact main thing, right? It was like, it's an extension, because it does contain a lot of like the core of what CrossFit is, but it's not saying like we're trying to replicate exactly what we're trying to like do with the whole world and like the masses that need to do CrossFit.
I think that early on they were trying to do that. They had the title of fittest on earth. They used to like echo over and over again: work capacity across broad times, modal domains, unknown and unknowable. They used to like very much lean into those. And I think in the early days that actually was happening. But then once we got to a certain point, it just started to narrow. And that's why I say it's become more functional fitness rather than CrossFit, because of the like narrowing that's happened.
Yeah. One of the things I thought of yesterday when we were talking about it is like, because I feel like one of your biggest arguments or positions you come from is like I can't remember the wording I used, but it's like an argument as to like the efficacy of what the test is, like the test at the games and what's putting out. Because like I feel like that's where your biggest like disagreement comes from, is like what we see done. No,
my biggest disagreement is that, well, the test is, because the test is, it's CrossFit's top down, so it always starts at the games and then goes down. But my biggest issue is that we're like, people, like I said, Hopper doesn't do CrossFit anymore. And I mean, obviously that's a little bit of a stretch, but
it is.
What I'm saying by that is he's not constantly learning new things. Well, I don't know about him. I'm just saying, like, these games athletes, like I've talked to I know games athletes can't do like a standing backflip.
Some could, I'm sure.
And this is where I wanted to talk to you about some of the events or some of the things that I want to know if you think it would be reasonable to come up at the games.
Okay, before you go into that, this is what I was thinking of yesterday. When we put like the test into the confines of what it is, like a 4-day test, right? And we're trying to test what CrossFit talks about is capacity across broad time and mortal domains.
Yeah.
Obviously, we're in the confines of a 4-day limit. You can only do so many tests, correct?
Yeah.
If we like categorize this into like sections or like buckets, let's say like a buckets of like percentage of things that should be tested, like what percentage of that test over a 4-day span should compromise? Like I think the bulk, I don't have a percentage nailed down. Like we can decide what we think that is, whether it's like 70% of that test should be like elements that are like monostructural, weightlifting, and gymnastics. Yeah, like what percentage is of that, and then outside of that, what percentages of things like you talk about, like shooting basketballs, like we talked about yesterday, like a free throw or a softball throw, right? Things like that. So where
well,
do you
I don't think that if we have 15 events, that 13 of them should be anaerobic endurance.
Do you feel like that's how you've statistically found that was 13 and the 15th before?
I think, I mean, just off the top of my head, I would assume most of them are. I would assume a lot of them are like that.
I feel like that's a stretch, 13, but
13. What about 10?
Well, I think there's only been 1 year there's been like 15 tests. I think it's usually like 12. I don't know, dude. I feel like the CrossFit Games have gone very endurance-esque over the last 5 years.
Okay.
But anyways, that's a side argument. So like, let's segue into like what types of things you think should, like, if they came up and being programmed. But then that's going to lead to the discussion of like how many things would be appropriate to just throw out there in the like 1 year at the games.
Yeah.
There's only going to be 12 tests, right? So how many things can you even throw out for it to be appropriate? And like my questions going into this is like, yeah, because when you start doing that, like imagine like even that year Boz threw in like 3 or 4 new things, like that was questionable, like all the things, and we can kind of get into it why we think it was or maybe wasn't, but it's just
and like, some of it was actually the thing specific. It wasn't even that it was new.
Yeah, but it's like if you're throwing in like whatever, however many 4 or 5 things new, and it's like it's just like so like out of left field and like so something that like, you know what I mean, like it's just like it's not going to bring interest. And the whole thing is what we want for the games is for it to be a marketing tool and people to enjoy it and for it to get a lot of attention. So if it's going to be something that's kind of like a not good to watch and not like good advertisement, then why would we do it? That's another question.
Yeah.
But go ahead.
Okay, let me ask you a few things, and I just want like you to give me like a quick yes or no about if you think this is reasonable
for
to
games
do at the
specifically,
games.
Or just like games.
Let's say games.
Okay.
Okay, and obviously I want you to take into account that some of these they would maybe announce a week before, some of these maybe 3 months or 6 months before, something like that. But if them even taking place at the games in general.
Okay.
A backflip or some sort of handspring, front handspring, back handspring.
Yeah.
Reasonable?
Yeah.
Okay. Softball toss or football toss, some sort of throw for distance.
Yes.
Backwards running.
Yeah.
Weighted basketball shots. 6-pound ball. You have to do 10 free throws.
No.
A lunge thruster. So you
With
lunge.
a barbell? With a barbell?
Yeah, or dumbbells or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay, so you agree with like all the ones that I just said?
Mostly. Yeah. But I don't think those could all come out in the same year.
Why not?
That's way too much. If you did, that was 5 things.
Yeah.
So half of the tests that you give, basically half the tests you give, are brand new and they're highly favored towards a specific skill.
Isn't something always favored towards a specific skill?
No, there's things favored towards specific training or a specific modality or
here's why I don't think they're
stimulus.
Here's why I don't think they're favored. Okay, most of the things that I just said include some good portion of the all 10 general physical skills.
What one of those requires strength?
A backflip?
That's not strength. It's relative strength, but it's not.
Bro, I did 20 the other day. I did 20 last week. Last Wednesday or Thursday, my abs are still wrecked.
Okay, it's relative. It's relative body weight strength, but it's not weightlifting. It's not moving an external load. It's moving your body
toss or a softball toss.
Yeah, but if we talk about equation of like we're doing a power equation, like the amount of force with mass, like it's the mass is literally almost insignificant because you're not moving. Like the mass of the object is literally irrelevant.
You're moving a large load long distance quickly.
It's not a large load. A ball that weighs a couple ounces.
It's large relative to the distance that you throw it in the time that you throw it.
It's in the weeds for me to understand, but I don't think.
Well, it's the same. It's the same thing as like one wall ball's not a large load long distance quickly, but if you do 20 of them,
yeah, but I would say that's like showing. That's not. Oh, I don't know. That's not. That wouldn't. You think someone who's strong? That's just a completely different type of strength.
Yeah, it is. Exactly my point.
But I'm saying.
And that's the problem. We're only testing one. If we just do the barbell Olympic lifts over and over again, we're only testing one type of strength.
I feel like we're testing strength in lots of different ways than just the barbell.
Yeah.
Gymnastics and,
Also, gymnastics is strength, like a backflip?
It is. It's relative body weight strength, but it's not weightlifting, which there doesn't need to be weightlifting.
But you think a softball toss is weightlifting?
I don't. It's just separate. That's why they say weightlifting and throwing. 2 separate things.
How is it? Okay, weightlifting and throwing.
Yeah, it's categorized as 2 separate things. They have similar.
So throwing is on the pyramid, and we've almost never seen it at the games besides the wall ball.
Let's bring up Taylor's message I sent you then. That was exactly talking about throwing.
Oh yeah, I have a lot to say about this too. Did you see they're bringing back the crossover dubs?
I did see that. I thought that was timely.
Oh, did you send that to me on messages?
I might have, but it was like pretty timely for our conversation. So.
Let me see. I might have to do some.
I feel like it's good that they did, just because like I feel like it would have been a disservice if they never did. Because, bringing them up one time would have been dumb. I think it's gonna be dope. I think people are gonna just do them like it's nothing. Or maybe like a couple that struggle. But especially this, dude, I feel like they didn't even need to give it out this far in advance of a notice.
Me neither. I feel like that was a little bit overkill.
I think they could have done it like a week out, just because everybody's done them in their training since they came out.
Yeah, a week. I think a week would have been good. You probably would have still had some people that struggled.
I wouldn't find out at all.
Yeah, me too.
All right.
Okay, can you see that, or is it super tiny?
It's pretty small, but you can read it if you want. I can zoom in on it. I can see.
That's better?
Good. Yeah.
Okay. All right, so this is
quick.
Taylor. Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
So this is Taylor responding to somebody in the CrossFit pyramid post that they made the other day who was
someone
saying
is basically like, why doesn't anyone program throwing like inside the affiliate for your programming? That was basically what the guy said.
And me and you had a talk about this yesterday. Okay, so Taylor says that pyramid is the theoretical hierarchy of athletic development. CrossFit is a core strength and conditioning program designed to increase work capacity across broad time mold domain and improve general physical preparedness. Learning and playing new sports falls into the periphery in the sense that specialist coaches should program it for their specialist athletes. Gen Pop CrossFit training is GPP core 3 to 5 times a week, and learning and playing new sports is a supplemental element to that. Putting your rudimentary understanding of training methodology and the massive benefits of a core GPP program for Gen Pop on full display. You're a part of the fitness industry pushing hard for backward progress. Nowhere in CrossFit's charter do they claim to develop athleticism or to program baseball throws and basketball shots. This is a sport-specific peripheral training to GPP. Okay. So what was your reaction to that?
Well, I just agreed because CrossFit has always said from day one that CrossFit is a GPP program. As soon as you take a specific sport, okay, not weightlifting, because weightlifting is included in our 3 modalities of monostructural weightlifting and gymnastics. So anything that's gymnastics, if you want to represent that as a sport, that's fine because it's in our modality of training. And same with weightlifting, if you want to call that a sport, because that's in our exact modality or methodology of modalities that we train. But as soon as you're talking about a specific sport that's to its own, it's specific to the sport. And so it is in the periphery. It's the periphery. It's not general, right?
Not if that movement in that sport fits under every possible definition of a functional movement in CrossFit.
Yes, it includes those things, those characteristics that we train, those foundational movements that we train in the same mechanisms. Like we're talking like hip extension and long line of action and all those things. But it's not talking about doing the specific movement as a part of your GPP program. You can supplement that on your own, but that's not what's supposed to be programmed inside the affiliates.
I disagree.
Why do you disagree?
I think that a softball toss is CrossFit. And I think there's no world under which it's not a part of CrossFit.
It's CrossFit in the sense that what the training you do can make you better at it.
It's CrossFit in that training it will make you better at it and other things.
Yeah. Doing the exact thing, that's called specific training because you're training for a specific thing. That's why it's sport.
But it's not specific.
Training.
It's
yes,
just
it is,
part,
it's its own sport. It has its own ball. It's its own categorized sport.
It doesn't matter.
Why does it not matter?
It doesn't matter if it's a specific sport. It can be a part of CrossFit.
It can be. It can be tested, but it doesn't need to be in its core principal training methods.
Why?
You could do it for fun because it's periphery, but you think it should be a part of it. You think you should be programming throws once a week?
I think that for the majority of people, there's probably more return on investment in doing thrusters than throwing a softball as far as you can. Yes. But it is still CrossFit, and it still should be trained, especially by people who are already like at 98% of their genetic capacity of thruster races. Then they should start expanding and getting better at the things outside of that. Because you're not getting banked. You doing friendly Fran intervals every week is not increasing your work capacity, the area under your capacity that you have, as much as it would be if you were to do something that you're not already doing.
Well, for one, I think you're kind of ignorant on like what high-level games athletes and training programs look like and like the variants that they have. Because I really don't think they're doing as much of the same stuff as you think they are. And 2, it's like if you wanted to get prepped for a softball throw, these people practice it for 3 days and they're ready to go, right? But if you are not practicing whatever friendly Fran movements or those types of stimuluses for the duration that you didn't practice the softball throw, you're not going to make that up within 3 days. So still, it goes back to that bucket conversation of like, 80% or whatever the percentage is of the bucket of things that you probably know are going to be tested, should be tested, because they fall under the category of like that core GPP training that we do, should be always the priority and focus. And it's like, sure, you can go practice softball throws, and sure, you can throw them in to your affiliate programming for fun to do them, but it doesn't mean it's still the main thing.
I never said it was the main thing.
I know, but no one's saying that it's not involved at all. But I would just argue, like, if I was programming for my affiliate, which I do, like, yeah, I'm probably not going to program softball tosses because the ROI is hardly anything. I just don't think, I mean, yeah, other than people might think it's fun. And if I'm a games athlete, if I absolutely suck so bad at throwing, then yeah, maybe heading into the games, maybe I'll take 20 minutes in a session to practice some throwing if I think that there's a slight chance that it could pop up. But once again, if it does pop up, do you think it's going to be 100 points at the games, or should it be 100 points at the games?
But this goes back to the GPP thing. If you like, it's great that you can do thrusters. If there's some reason that you need to throw something and you haven't practiced it, and you're like, oh, I need 3 days to practice it. That's the idea behind the GPP part of what we were just talking about.
Do you think a softball throw at the games could be or should be programmed for 100 points, a full event?
No.
Okay, then why would a games athlete even give it that much thought or time to worry about trying to train it? Because they could probably do it.
Because I think
maybe not do it to the best of their abilities, but the training
I think 50 is reasonable.
Okay, but the train, yeah, 50 points. I'm sure they're like, if it did come up, I could hold maybe a 12th place. Why do I need to practice anymore? I'm not worried about my place.
Well, I'm not arguing against. Yeah, I'm not arguing against the.
Well, you're arguing like why like the athletes wouldn't train it then, like aren't training it as often as you feel like they should.
No, I think they're doing everything right. Like they're doing what they have to.
You're the one saying that.
I'm saying they're not doing CrossFit.
Because why?
Because the CrossFit Games doesn't test CrossFit. It tests functional fitness.
Well, that brings us back to the argument. It's like, how many things can you fit inside the scope of a 4-day test?
I think
if we had a CrossFit Games that ran over a 3-month period, and you did one event a week, or whatever, a couple events a week, and you ran over 3 months, I bet you there's a lot more things that fall into the scope.
You've done Isabel 8 times, bro.
Yeah, I think that's dumb, obviously, but that's not saying that's not intended for the same person to just do it over and over and over.
And you've done some squat rope climb workout 4 times.
I don't know which one you're thinking of, but
TFX, NorCal, and then wasn't there one in no, that was the last chance qualifier.
Yeah. And then but my devil's advocate to that is was what I talked about yesterday, and you called me a PFAA president, is because I'm like, when we're trying to make a sport like watchable and somewhat able to follow and have some guidelines and parameters about what the sport is, there has to be a line somewhere for it to have somewhat, like I said, we're not going to freaking do 10 spins for time. You know what I mean? You can't just be pulling anything from any direction. People are going to
the art is in the programming. The art is in the programming.
Yes, I agree. And I'm not saying every program event is always miraculous and great. And I'll be the first one to say I do think Dave's programming is a little bit dull in the fact that we know too much of what to expect, and it's not a lot of new, it's not as creative as we have seen other people do, someone maybe JR. But yeah, you don't think as a sport, if you want it to be followed and want people to engage in the sport, to have good marketing for CrossFit, do you not think it needs to be have good viewership?
I would love to see a CrossFit competition, and I don't really, don't care that much about functional fitness. I don't watch the Functional Fitness Federation workouts.
I don't either.
Yeah. Because I like CrossFit, not functional fitness.
But you're the one saying it's not CrossFit.
Yeah, it's becoming not CrossFit more and more.
I understand.
I bet you this year Dave is gonna program something that has an echo bike, and it's gonna be mixed with some other movement that's large, pretty explosive, that you could do push to do 18 reps per minute on, and the workout's gonna be between 3 and 6 minutes long.
But don't you think, I know what you're saying, don't you think if we're trying to go your route of because I mean, let's take into like account like a lot of the stuff we do. How many of the tests, let's say out of 12 tests at the games, are pretty like replicable to like workouts or training you do inside of an affiliate? How many out of the 12?
Usually like 7.
Okay, 7, 8 is what I was thinking.
Yeah.
But you think that should be less because you want to get more outside the box of what we do in an affiliate? It's kind of what you're saying. Like you want to get like really outside the box and like do less basic CrossFit of what you see inside an affiliate because you don't feel like that's very CrossFit by doing a lot of what we just do in the affiliate. Don't you feel like that's kind of what you're saying?
Well, it's a problem because I think that like it's all relative to the person. Like I could keep back squatting and like me personally, I'm talking about myself. Like I could keep back squatting and try and add like 3 or 5 or 10 pounds to my back squat over the next 8 weeks or whatever, you know, or I could learn how to do a backflip, or I could learn how to do like a press to handstand, or I could learn, or I could do lunge thrusters, something that when I did it was ruined my life. Like, I just think or I could learn how to swim, which I've been avoiding for the last 2 years. Like, I just think that there's like, it's relative to the person of like, we need to be pushing our margins up more, not just getting like, okay, my back squat went from 405 to like 407. Awesome.
But don't you think that CrossFit like has like when we talk about class, when you hear the statement, do you disagree with the statement or classic CrossFit? Like, is that a thing to you, or do you think that's a dumb statement? Classic.
No,
CrossFit?
I get what people mean when they say that.
Do you agree that is a thing or should be a thing?
Yeah.
So don't you think it's good for the CrossFit Games to be testing a good chunk of what we refer to as classic CrossFit and what's seen inside of an affiliate from a host of different angles? One, just like a marketing tool for people to see what they're capable of when they walk inside of an affiliate, comparing like the crossover. When you think about the CrossFit Open, when we're trying to get as mass participation as possible, the things that you do inside the CrossFit Open, and then seeing that advancement in the stage and being able to follow that like a story, right? And like me, say just someone is like an average Joe who's been participating in the CrossFit Open for several years, right? And then they can see their progress and what they've done, and they can compare themselves to the top level, right? And it's just kind of this, it brings this like almost like camaraderie of like what you do and who you are. And like, I know I'm kind of going outside the topic a little bit, but I just still think that, like, I understand like sentiments you're coming from, but I also just like still think that classic CrossFit is a thing. But I also agree that like the test could be like have better efficacy possibly, and like including more things. And like Boz said it himself, right, a few years ago when he took over programming and like pointed out blatant like weaknesses and things that get looked over, specifically when we talk about like our level of gymnast ability compared to like our weightlifting ability. But that's just kind of like a part of like how the sport is evolving, right? And like things like unfold, and like how like athletes and the communities continues to progress. So like I always think it's kind of like an evolving thing. So one, I think you're kind of being just negative about it. Like it's just stuck and it's bland. Do I always think it can improve and like we can have conversations to like improve? I do. But like I do think that like going back to the core argument of like CrossFit Games athletes or whatever not actually being CrossFitters, like I feel like that's just such a black and white statement once again, because I just feel like it just draws such a hard line in the sand. And it's like, okay, I'd rather you come to the point of view of like they could do CrossFit better, right? Because like maybe they're not like following it to a T of like what we say what CrossFit truly is. But I don't think you can draw such a distinction of like it's not CrossFit because XYZ examples.
Yeah.
I gotta get going, probably. So if you have whatever statement you want to wrap this up.
Do you have like 3 more minutes?
Yeah.
Okay. So the actual reason I posted that thing that I said Jayson Hopper doesn't do CrossFit. So they were talking about how he's on a high carb diet and like trains high carb, blah, blah, blah. Do you remember a few months ago when I came to you and I said something like, do you think you could beat me in a competition if we were both on keto?
Yeah.
Look at this clip that I found recently. And I want to see what you think about this real quick. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Modal domains because it covered everything.
And in fact, when I designed CrossFit, technically this work capacity across broad time and modal domains, I was very careful to avoid the silly discussion of metabolic pathways, especially in light of the fact that a new one was discovered. And so what I did is I set up a system that would accommodate an infinite number of metabolic pathways. You can keep finding them, and I'll keep exercising them, not knowing they're there, by increasing work capacity across broad time and modal domains. That includes any imagined work metabolic pathway. Any bioenergetic scheme will be optimized with my effort.
So when I said he's not doing CrossFit because he's reliant on carbs, what I meant was in CrossFit under modal domains, I think includes training different metabolic pathways, like Greg just said.
And
if you're solely reliant on carbs, then you're not fit in that domain.
This is physiology 101. But when you're using energy systems to create burn ATP, you're never using only one energy system.
I understand that.
I can't remember what the term is called, but you could do a test, and I think you can do it by blowing out like CO2 and like in a thing and read, and you get a ratio.
Yeah.
And you could probably do it the same thing from getting a blood level, but it will tell you whatever the ratio is, how much, like what substrate, meaning like what source of energy, or what fuel you're using for your energy, right? But it's never all of one. Hopper's definitely not just using carbs for energy. He's definitely using fat plenty of the time. It's never all of one.
But do you think if he didn't have carbs, how do you think he would do?
Oh, it'd be very hard to have the energy to train how he does.
But do you think that there's someone who has a better ability to output without carbs
on the same exact tests?
Yeah.
No.
You don't think?
No, I think if they were handed the same test and someone like him, he has no carbs,
and they have no carbs,
but
that person trains without carbs.
I don't think they would be nearly at the same level. No, I still think he would win, because I think he's built himself up such a high ceiling of ability that I think that person that's no carbs, we've never even seen anybody at the games who does a low or no carb diet, right? They wouldn't even be anywhere close to the fitness
because we only do stuff at the games with carbs.
No, it's not true, because you can never test just one. That's not possible.
Dude, you know
what do you think the marathon?
Have you ever heard Matt Fraser, dude? He was drinking Gatorade after.
Yeah, but what do you think the marathon row was? What do you think the main energy source for the marathon row was?
Oxygen.
Yeah, fat. So, I like it though.
But what about that? What about that energy system in short time domain?
What about it?
So, okay, let me ask you this. At the games, they do a workout that's very metabolically demanding, 8 to 15 minutes. Then you're not allowed to eat between events. There's 3-4 hours, and you redo it. Or you do something similar, again, anaerobically demanding.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that's a reasonable? I mean, I don't know if you could really do that at the games, but do you think that's a part of CrossFit? Even if you're training every day?
I think that's a part of definitely like training different pathways that your body's going to use. Like, yeah, for sure. What Greg said. Yeah, you could do that. I think that falls under the category of, testing yourself in different domains of fitness, for sure. I think it's appropriate to test on a CrossFit Games. No, I don't.
Why?
Because when you're trying to have it be like a regulated, uniform sport where people are competing for money, and you're trying to have too many like controllables where it's just like there's too many factors that play in that don't make it even across. Like, did Drake? He's got to go back and watch. I'm not a PFAA person. Mason's throwing me under the bus. I forget that we're actually live. No one actually ever watches us. But yeah. I don't think you think it's appropriate. Like if you were to say like people should fast.
I think it could. Well, I think it could be something like I said, like definitely not for all of them, but you could do something like have an event, hold the athletes back in like some like you know how they used to do, like hold them back in the area, and then they have to wait 4 hours and then go back out and do another event. And they're not allowed to eat between.
When did they do this?
Remember how they used to like I think the finals in 2014, they held them out and then they like pulled them out onto the floor and like announced the workout there, but they had been like sitting in that room for a couple hours.
Yeah, I mean, I think I guess that's like appropriate in terms of like just kind of keeping them in the dark and yeah, I think that's cool.
But doing that without food?
I just think it's just like so gimmicky and like trying to like just putting too many constraints. I just think when you put like it comes up the same thing of like when you think of standards, like just like in movements, like when you like put out more objectives and like things that people have to follow, it just like makes it too hard. Like I just make things more objective rather than subjective. You know what I mean? Even like whether it's outside the controls or whatever you're deciding to do, I just think it would just be too in the weeds, I feel like.
Yeah.
But yeah, I got to bounce. Definitely not a PFAA member. Dang. That's funny though.
PFAA CEO Drake Lewis, everybody.
All right, I'll talk to you later.
All right, see you, bro.
Bye. I can get out of here.
All right, that's all I got for today. Me and Drake got into that argument, but I have a new video coming out on the main channel soon, so be on the lookout for that. And then I'm going to do another video either on this channel or the main, depending on how good it comes out, that will be coming out sometime next week. That's all I got. Peace.